Shabbat Tov Rabotai. Mishnah Yomi is continuing in Challah, the fourth parak of Challah, at Mishnah Zayin. Yisrael, a regular Jewish guy, Shahayu Arisin La'ovde Kochavim Syria, and he was working as an aris, a sharecropper, on land of a non-Jew in Syria, which is our beloved Syria. Now, a sharecropper is doing the work on the land in return for percentage of the produce, but he doesn't own the land. Rabbi Eliezer mechayev perotehem b'maisrot ub'shvit. Now, Rabbi Eliezer said in this case, he is chayev to separate the tithes. And this is on a rabbinic level because he, Lamaisa, doesn't own the land, and it's land that's in Syria, which is, it's right next to Eretz Yisrael, so on a rabbinical level, they required tithing there. The Rabban Gamliel says in such a case, the sharecropper in Syria does not have to separate tithes. As a side note, Syria is very interesting because David HaMelech conquered Syria before all of Eretz Yisrael was conquered, and he conquered it sort of for financial reasons. It was a kivush yachid that he decided to do it on the advice of the Sanhedrin because Am Yisrael needed parnasa. There's actually Gemara that refers to this in the first parak of Brachos, that Am Yisrael needed parnasa, he needed resources and land, so he went ahead and conquered Syria. And this, Rabotai, this is, by the way, why Syrian Jews are very good in business. They get that straight from David HaMelech. Now, you might be wondering what this halacha is doing in Challah. So the Mishnah continues. Rabban Gamliel omer shtei chalot b'Syria. You have to separate two challahs in Syria. We're actually going to explain in Mishnah Chet why we would be separating challah twice. Rabbi Eliezer omer challah achad. Rabbi says you just take challah once. Achazu kulo shel Rabban Gamliel v'kulo shel Rabbi Eliezer. So the Syrian Jews, they used the leniencies of both of these sages, both by the sharecropper and by the challah. Hazru linhag k'divrei Rabban Gamliel b'shtei drachim. But then they realized you shouldn't use a kula from Rabbi A and a contradictory kula from Rabbi B. Just follow Rabbi A or Rabbi B, both l'chumra or l'kula. So they did, and they followed Rabban Gamliel, meaning the sharecropper was pater from tithing on the land that was non-Jewish land, and they were taking two challahs. Now, Mishnah Chet, we're going to figure out why we would be taking two chalot. Rabban Gamliel omer shalosh aratzot lechalo. There are three different regions, geographic areas, with different halachot for taking challah. Eretz Yisrael kaziv challah achat. From Eretz Yisrael itself, Israel, up to Kaziv. Now, Kaziv is somewhere up in the north near Akko. I think it's called Achziv today. There's a little shtickle place called Achziv. That might be the same Kaziv, or maybe in that general region up in the north. So that's Eretz Yisrael proper. You take one challah, you give it to the Kohen. And of course, you keep this challah tahor, and the Kohanim and their household can eat it when they're tahorim. Mishnah continues, Mikaziv ad nahar v'ad amana, from Kaziv to the river and the mountains. We don't know exactly which river they're talking about. This Mount Amana is way up in the top of Eretz Yisrael near the coast. So this area, it's sort of quasi-Eretz Yisrael. The Bartner explains it was conquered by the Ole Mitzrayim, by Yeshua ben Nun, but it wasn't reconquered by the Ole Bavel. It wasn't then settled by the Jews returning from Babylonian exile. So the issue is, if it's not Eretz Yisrael proper, it has rabbinically a gezerah of tumah. The reason being is that the non-Jews outside of Eretz Yisrael, they didn't really have formal cemeteries, or maybe the rich and famous got a nice burial. Other people got buried sort of anywhere and everywhere, meaning, anywhere you go outside of Eretz Yisrael could have tumah based on the burial habits of the local inhabitants of burying bodies all over the place. So in this area, it's shtei chalot. You separate challah twice. Achat le'or, one goes in the fire and gets burnt. Now that sounds familiar because we do that in Chutz La'aretz, where everything's also tameh today. Achat le'kohen, and you give one to the kohen, and this one is a gift to the kohen, but it's not really technically a challah, so he can eat it even though he's tameh because he's not in Eretz Yisrael proper, and there could be graves. The Mishnah explains shel ur, the one that goes to the fire, yesh la shir. It has the requisite amount, the 1 out of 24, or the 1 out of 48 if it was for commercial use. We learned that shir earlier. So that's the real challah. V'shel kohen ein la shir. The one for the kohen, of course, it doesn't have a minimal amount. Of course, you should give him something nice, but it's not the real challah. Now, the reason we're still separating a real challah, even though it's going to be burned, is because this area was originally part of Eretz Yisrael. We don't want anyone to forget that. But right now, it's not Eretz Yisrael proper because it was not sanctified by the Olei Bavel, by Ezra. So really, it's a rabbinical chiyuv to separate challah. So it's sort of it used to be Eretz Yisrael, it's quasi Eretz Yisrael, and it's a rabbinical level, and there's a rabbinical tumah, so there are kind of competing interests. So we want people to remember the unique status of this area. So they're separating two challahs. The Mishnah continues, min nachar umin amana lifnim shtei chalot. So outside that area, further outside of Israel, two challahs, achat l'or achat l'kohen. Again, one to the fire and one give to a kohen, and you can eat it tameh. Shel or ein la shir. So here, the one that goes in the fire can be just a tiny pinch, which sounds familiar to us. V'shel kohen yesh la shir. The one they give to a kohen to eat tameh, that does have the minimal amount, because that is a real challah, but it's derabbanan. It's a rabbinical challah, so that we remember the mitzvah of challah even outside of Eretz Yisrael. Even though challah, again, is only really a mitzvah deraisa in Eretz Yisrael. And because of that, tvul yom ochla. A tvul yom is a kohen who had a contact with something tameh, like a sheretz, and then he went to the mikveh. And now he's a tvul yom. He's waiting until sunset to eat his real truma. But since this is sort of a zecher l'truma, zecher l'chala, and it can be eaten tameh, he can eat it even while he's a tvul yom. You might remember tvul yom from the first Mishnah in Shas about saying Shema, which we do in the night. At the same time, the kohen can go eat their truma if they were a tvul yom and went to the mikveh. Rabbi Yossi says, Eino tzarech tevila. It doesn't have to be a tvul yom. A tvul yom, he's gone to the mikveh and he's just waiting for sunset to be fully tahor. He says even if he's mamish tameh, he doesn't even have to go to the mikveh. The kohen can eat this rabbinical truma in chutz la'aretz tameh. Now, we don't do that anymore today, but he does say asur lezavim lezavot nidil yoldot. So he says, but if it's a tumah that comes not from an outside source, but from its own body, it's an irregular emission, or a nida, which is a regular emission, but still a source of tumah, or a yoledis, she had a baby, mazel tov. So if the tumah comes from their own body, then they are not eligible until they fix that up. V'ne'achelet im hazar al shulchan, and the kohanim can eat this together with a zar, a non-kohen, on the same table. Normally, they should not be eating truma, real challah, or real truma at the same table with a non-kohen, in case he wants to taste it. They would need some sort of a hecker to realize not to do that. Intended to kol kohen, and this rabbinical quasi challah can be given to any kohen, even if he's an amaretz, even if he's not so careful with tumah and tahara. Shkoyach rabosai.